In 2014, Jack Letts left the United Kingdom and traveled to Syria. The British government says he went to join ISIS, but his family disputes that. In May 2017, the British-Canadian man was captured by Kurdish militia and has been held ever since in a prison in northern Syria. His father, John Letts, is in Ottawa today. He's asking Canadian officials to help bring his son to Canada. Joining me now is John Letts. Hi, Mr. Letts.
Hi, Vashti.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me.
You just came from a meeting with government officials at Global Affairs Canada. Who did you meet with, and what did they tell you?
We met with an assistant deputy minister, and there were a few of us and some other officials to talk about what the current state of things are and how they could help. And it wasn't a particularly stimulating meeting.
What does that mean?
Well, I was hoping for some sort of progress. We'd had such positive information from them for the first kind of 9 months that Jack was in captivity with the Kurds. But there was a big change earlier this spring and after our meeting in May, and that's pretty much been reinforced.
And what does that mean? So essentially you're saying that when you say they were giving you positive responses until May, what does that mean?
We had very clear messages saying we're going to help. And
did they say we're going to bring them to Canada?
Yeah,
bring him to Canada?
We have all that. He has certain rights here, and yes, we'll take him out. That Canada would help take him out of the Kurdish areas to a safe third country. And once he was out, Canada and the British government together would get him home. And Jack wanted to come to Canada, so the idea was he would go to Canada, but the option was also for Britain. That was pretty clear.
So government officials from the Canadian government told you that?
Yeah, well, yes, we have it in writing. We have emails.
And then in May?
Well, just before May, things changed. And certainly the position in May when we met GAC was that there's nothing we can do because it's too dangerous to move him. And that position's now been reinforced again.
That's what you were told today?
That's essentially what we were told today. There's nothing we can do because it's too dangerous to move him. And we just said, well, it's kind of dangerous where he is. He is dying slowly where he is. What they told us in May was also, not only is it too dangerous to move him, he can't give his mental consent to be moved, which I thought that, well, I'm his father. I think I can give him mental consent in his stead. He said, oh, he's been probably too traumatized to make that decision. And we said, well, his messages from the Red Cross are pretty clear. I mean, he's definitely okay, but he certainly didn't mentally consent to be held where he is and in difficult conditions. But we've also said, well, we can mitigate these risks, the danger of him moving to, the most logical way out would be to go to Erbil, the town in northern Iraq. But their view is that, well, that's an autonomous region, and actually it's controlled by the Iraqi government. Well, the airport certainly is, although the region is controlled by the Kurds, so that there's still a risk of his safety coming out. And I appreciate that, but he's going to die where he is, so I think we need to take a risk to move him.
Have they ever expressed concern, or have they ever alleged that he has ties to ISIS?
Global Affairs?
Yes.
No, never. And at the beginning when you said the British government alleges that Jack was with ISIS, that's not true. Actually, the British government has never said we think Jack was with ISIS, nor have the police.
They've said they won't bring him home.
No, they say we want to question him. Yeah, they've said that we won't bring him home because we don't bring anyone home, children, women, anyone.
Why would they want to question him if they didn't believe he had ties to a terrorist organization?
Oh, I mean, I think he should be questioned. I think he should be detained. I mean, I have a million questions for him. I'm sure they will, but the police have told us repeatedly we have no evidence that he has any ties to ISIS. It's always been the case. No evidence has ever been brought forward for this except this photo of him standing on a rock. The evidence...
The finger post.
Yeah, the finger.
Finger held up, which was a symbol for that ISIS fighters.
No, that's called the Shahida. I think I've just been told by a professor of religion that, is it 13 times a day? It's a part of the praying. It's slightly like crossing...
But at that time, it was used by ISIS as well.
Well, no doubt ISIS has used it. I don't have a problem with that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, I mean, Jack is a very devout Muslim and he prays constantly, and that was the symbol of Islam. That's how I see it. I mean, I'm not a religious man. But Jack went to Jack went to Syria before ISIS had declared a caliphate. And
in 2014, correct?
Yeah.
But
he was
ISIS
actually mostly
was
in Iraq, not in Syria.
Well, but ISIS was, I mean, throughout 2014, in June of 2014, for example, they captured Mosul. ISIS had already begun its war in Iraq.
Yeah.
In early 2014.
There's no doubt that he chose to go inside. I'm not disputing that. I don't have any problem with that. And he has a lot of questions to answer just for having done that. But I also know from the messages, which I've never been able to talk about because of contempt of court rules in the UK, we can't talk about what we know about what Jack was up to or what he said to us. And a lot of what he has told us, explaining about what he did, has come out since he came out. Because when you're inside, like for example, the interview he did with a British newspaper, The Independent, in January, well, we had just been arrested for trying to help him escape. Which of course we were told by the British police we could help him escape. That's why we tried to send the money.
You were arrested for funding terrorism, right? Charged with.
Yeah, we were
and
charged.
the trial has yet to happen.
Yes, it keeps being delayed. But the police told us, we have it in writing, you can send the money to help him escape. And then we were arrested after that. I mean, we have that's been clear. So in early 2016, when he gave those 2 interviews, well, we had already been charged. So it was in all over the papers, all over, including the Middle East, that Jack Letts was trying to escape from ISIS territory, and that's why his parents were arrested. Well, ISIS knew that. So then he gives an interview. Well, what is he going to say? I mean, anybody who tried to escape from ISIS territory, if they got you escaping, they chop your head off, they crucify you, they did that to the people smugglers who were trying to get people out. I mean, it wasn't exactly, you're not going to go around too publicly condemning them, or you're not going to make it. And also, you know, there were often messages where he wrote to us where he would be using a messaging app. So he would send a verbal message to us on the messaging app, and it would say unusual kind of religious things that had no relationship to us. But what he was typing at the same time was, "Mom, I've got to get out of here. This is, this is horrible. I don't have any money. They're going to kill me." And they were coming at the same time. So we're in this position where, all I can say is he was never on social media. They've never been able to present to us any solid evidence other than the photo.
Can you understand, I guess, why there would be some hesitation on the part of the Canadian government, for example? I mean, this is somebody who, I understand you're a dad and you believe in your son's innocence, but he went to a place that ISIS destroyed many parts of it. He was in an area held, and he was in a picture with his finger up. Is there a part of you that believes he could have some ties to this terrorist organization?
No, I don't think he had ties, and he's insisted he never had ties to them. I'm not in denial, and I don't have a problem with him being arrested. From the very beginning, we went to the police to ask permission to send money and to get him out. We have always been transparent. I have no problem with him being arrested and detained. I mean, I think everybody who went to Syria coming back should be detained. They should be investigated. If there's
but
any
do you understand
sort of
why it's not? It doesn't appear to be a priority for the federal government. Do you get how? I remember having Minister Goodale on, the public safety minister, not long ago, and even today he said that they're not putting consular officials in danger to go over there, and there's no legal obligation to repatriate. There is a level of concern about the activities that maybe could have been partaken in over there, and therefore there is a hesitancy to risk, maybe it's political, maybe it's legal, that type of risk, to risk all that and go to the effort of bringing him back.
I understand the hesitancy. All I'm asking is, first of all, people should be considered innocent until proven guilty. I realize there's this issue, we can't collect evidence. Well, I think there is actually a great deal of evidence that you could get working with allies and working with Kurdish intelligence and Israeli intelligence.
But it's hard.
And all
We have people who have returned here who admit to fighting in Abu Huzaifa, and we
I
can't
have
do anything
no
about it.
tolerance of these people either. I'm not soft on this. Of course, Jack should be arrested. He should be detained. Nobody should. But I still think he's Canadian. I still think he has a right to return. I still think part of our rights as Canadians is that we have a right to be considered innocent until proven guilty. And, I think that's a cornerstone of democracy.
Should the Canadian government, though, the British government won't do it. They have said, no, we won't.
Yeah,
we won't.
Even, well,
should the Canadian government, Britain is supposed to be our ally. Should the Canadian government overrule something like that? Who are we to say you're wrong?
Well, British ministers have stood up and said anybody who went to Syria should be shot. Do we think that's acceptable?
No,
Two.
but that's a different
Two,
story.
actually.
But the government itself has said we're not going to bring him back. So
Yep.
is Canada really in a position, honestly, to say, sorry, you're wrong, we're going to bring him here?
Yes, because I think that we don't, in Britain, they don't have our constitution or charters of rights. We have a very different attitude, I think, to democracy and to, the way we run our society. I don't think we have to slavishly do what Britain tells us to do. And I think Canada has a good criminal justice system, I'm sure. I'm sure we have very good intelligence and security systems. They spend billions on them. I think we can probably mitigate the risk of really a handful of people who would come back. So I don't think just because Britain says, we don't want them back, I think we could have our own independent views on that, or independent foreign policy. I mean, there are Canadian children, babies, how can anybody condemn them as being violent in any way?
No, but I think there is a problem. I think a lot of people do have a lot of concern about the people who did go over there.
And I have a lot,
in those cases for the express purpose of doing something nefarious that resulted in carnage all over this part of the world and that part of the world.
And I completely agree. I detest that. How could anybody of us? My family and friends are walking the streets of Canada like anyone. A good friend of mine's daughter was blown up in the bomb blast in the London Tube in 2006. I'm not soft on that, but I also think it's probably safer that we have some of these people that potentially are bad. How do you know? You need to be able to. You can't just condemn someone without having some sort of evidence. But I think maybe it's better to have some of these people back here, monitored, seriously controlled, imprisoned, than running around the world doing horrible things. I mean, I have yet, it's not just I'm a father in denial. I've said from the beginning, show me the evidence. I will publicly condemn my son if he's done anything. Please show me something. We've been asking the British police for this for ages. If the Canadian Intelligence Service, anybody has anything, please let me know. Please give it to the police, but our lawyers who have access to a lot of, we're obviously on trial. We get access to secret evidence and disclosure and all that type of thing. If there's anything that I find that is damaging like that, I will publicly come here and tell you I will condemn. I love him to death, but I will condemn his activities. I've not seen that. I'm not trying to hide it. I'm being very transparent if there's any information. But what's happened is he's been hung out to dry by the media. That's how I see it. There was the journalist who made this story up that he joined ISIS. Once it was out there in a Sunday tabloid in Britain, it spread through the world. You can't put the rabbit back in the hat. Everyone thinks, and I think they confuse him with Jihadi John and other people. And the media it's just repeated and embellished, and he's like...
Although you've had the opportunity to talk a lot on the media today.
Today I have. Right. No, it's fantastic. But in Britain, I've been under contempt of court rules for 3 years. Okay. I mean, and we can't talk about it. So
unfortunately,
I really appreciate. Now,
I have
thank
to go,
you for the
but
time.
I appreciate your time, Mr. Letts. Thank you so much for coming in.